Ooh, yeah! I need a little excitement. Step into a Slim Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 25th episode of Shot of Nostalgia, where we continue our deep dive into 1996 WCW history, baby. And we are in the prime of the prime, the time of all times, man. We are here live for Halloween Havoc. In the early Nitro beforehand, brother. I am good old Mike Belcaster, spooky Mike Belcaster. And as always with me, the man with the plan.
Live from the No Cell Studios, it's the Ace of the Tavern, Stephen ACEFIELD, and man, the commitment on Mike Belcaster to the Halloween gimmick. I mean, no gimmicks needed. Absolutely so stoked to be here, dude. Halloween Havoc 1996. This is one of those episodes we circled on the calendar to be like, I can't wait to get here. And here we are. We're in the start of spooky season here, starting our weekend right, the first weekend in October. I mean, what can you ask, man? This is going to be a great episode ahead for not only the newsletter, but the event itself. It was very, very memorable.
Hell yeah, man. Really made me miss these holiday-themed events. And this was always like a good, like the fucking set, everything. We'll get into it, man. You know, we got some shit to cover beforehand, but let's get ready to be hypnotized with your eyes, man. Yeah.
Before we get into the newsletter, let's just talk about what we're going to be covering today. And as you guys can see on top of Mike Belcaster is the lovely Halloween Havoc 1996 logo. But we will be covering an episode of October 28th, 1996. And each week we will continue to review 2 episodes, including a pay-per-view when they come up. We have freshly watched these episodes, and we have 5 episodes left of 1996, so we're quickly approaching the end of what a great year it was. Season 2 will be coming to us. It's a different time, different era, different company, but who knows when we're going to be seeing WCW again.
Yeah, no, I'm sad to see it go, but I'm super pumped for what's on the horizon. So, yeah, man. Thank you guys for joining us. It's going to be a good fucking episode today.
All right, so let's get into the newsletter and talk everything about Dave Meltzer and what he has to say in November of 1996.
Even better because it's spooky.
So you and I spoke about a few weeks ago how the newsletter has been sort of dry. Well, this is not one of the dry newsletters. We have a lot of news to unpack, and there's a lot of contracts coming to a head here. And I have a lot of hypothetical scenarios to present to not only you, but the audience as well. So make sure you guys participate in the chat if you guys have an answer to the questions I have, because there's no right or wrong answer, but we're dealing with the butterfly effect of what would have happened if X, Y, and Z didn't happen. Let's get to the first part. He mentions in the newsletter, and this is October 28th, 1996. Bret Hart agreed to a 20-year contract with the World Wrestling Federation just prior to making the announcement of his returning on the live Monday Night Raw show from Fort Wayne, Indiana on 10/21. So we see this. This is sort of, I guess, WWF fans were rejoicing that they would be having Bret Hart for life. Only a year later, we would see everything crumble down, and then we'll obviously talk about the contract that actually was. But do you remember when Bret Hart signed this enormous 20-year contract, and did it shock you to see that amount of years and that amount of money?
Listen, I don't recall the logistics to the contracts. I remember seeing Bret back. I remember being excited for it. But a 20-year contract at this time, unheard of. This is ridiculous, right? Especially with Federation money and not Ted money, but Federation money. I get the need to try to lock somebody in like that, but man, you're talking 20 years in 1996. That's insanity.
Yeah, and we see some of the holes in the contract, and unfortunately, we know that this story doesn't have a happy ending for Bret Hart or the WWF. As we all know, we know what happens in November 1997, only a year and a month later. The WWF would continue to falter, crushed under the weight of such strong competition from World Championship Wrestling. Vince McMahon would ultimately go back on his word and say to Bret, I can't fulfill my end of the contract. And he told Bret, go entertain other offers, go elsewhere. Obviously, the only other game in play that could pay him the money he was looking for was Ted Turner in WCW. And they came back with an insane deal, something like $9 million over 3 years. And Hart was put in an impossible position. And here we are. 1997, we see the butterfly effect. But what would have happened? I have this question to ask you before we get into more Meltzer. If Bret Hart in 1996 was to pack his bags and say, I'm going to check it out, I'm going to be part of this whole build. Say he shows up in December of 1996 at Starrcade. We have him added to the fold. Is it possible that the Monday Night Wars would look different? And we'll talk about some of the ramifications that eventually happened. But what's your initial thought about Bret Hart in 1996 WCW? Where does he fit?
I think he would fit in like a snow cone on a hot summer day, man. I think it would be fantastic for not only WCW, but it might have been the last nail in the coffin for WWF at the time. I really think so. I mean, that's who else do you got out to lean on besides Shawn Michaels over there? And like Sid. Like, I mean, where are you going with it? Like, it's crazy. But yeah, who knows what would have happened? I mean, obviously Bret played a huge part in Steve Austin's career and his rise to stardom. I mean, Shawn Michaels, obviously, so many big names, and that it still took him up until that 97 for it to really, really take off. I think Bret jumping the WCW would have definitely put Vince out to pasture way earlier than he thought he was going to be. It's insane.
Yeah, he was on the ropes, and obviously not being able to pay Bret is saying one thing, but you're right. But I also started thinking about the booking things, and you alluded to it, the Steve Austin effect. What happens to Steve Austin? Is he that undeniable that he would be eventually feuding with somebody else? What does WrestleMania 13 look like for him without Bret there? Does he have this huge moment? Obviously, he had the King of the Ring moment without Bret Hart involved. But that WrestleMania 13 moment where he passes out to the blood and that famous match with Ken Shamrock as the enforcer of the match or the special ref, that was the moment that put Austin on the map. I mean, they did the double switch. It's one of the more famous matches in WrestleMania history.
Yeah.
Is it possible without that moment we don't get the Austin 316 era and we don't get the boom, we don't get the Attitude Era, and possibly we're not sitting here waxing poetic about what was once WCW and talking about what could have been? It's crazy to even think about.
Yeah, no, it's very crazy to think about. I don't know, man. Like I said, Bret was a very crucial part of those changes, for better and for worse, obviously. I think Austin would have been fine without it, but who knows where it would have been. Like maybe we would have seen a Steve Austin in WCW shortly after. Who knows? I don't know, man. It's really hard to predict the past changing, so it's insane.
So the amount of money that he's be getting is slightly less than $3 million per year guaranteed over the first 3 years, and lesser amount for a non-performer contract that would cover the remaining 17 years, which is why Hart in the interview on Raw said he'd be with WWF for life. So the money was structured differently. It was layered. We see some sporting contracts have this as well, where they're paying more money down the line or paying less money as time goes on, front-loaded, that kind of stuff. We see it a lot in baseball. So it is believed that the total figure amounts to be somewhere between $11 million and $14 million over the length of the contract. Hart has made it clear that he didn't want to wrestle past his prime, as most of the major superstars in wrestling end up doing, particularly since he's been outspoken against Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair's continue to wrestle in their mid to late 40s, which was interesting to read because mid to late 40s is like, the new 30 in wrestling today. But man, it's crazy because so much changes in a year. We thought you had Bret for life, and there he is going over to WCW. But man, the bidding war was insane because there was other bidding wars going on at the time. We'll get into Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, but this was the first domino to fall, and it felt like WWF had a notch in their belt for the win, but so much changes.
Yeah, and how shortly so much changed. You're talking, we're at the tail end of 96 here, and in less than a year. I mean, he's already, screw jobs done. All this shit happens. It's insanity, man.
So the contract that Hart was looking at from WCW guaranteed him $2.8 million per year over 3 years. It was broken down initially into an $800,000 per year deal for a maximum of 180 total dates as a pro wrestler, which is about half of what he'd be doing with WWF, and 2 movie deals, which was a huge drawing card for a lot of guys with WCW. We know Hogan's contract had him on for like 4 movies, and we'll talk about Hogan's deal in a second. because Turner had that connection with Time Warner and everything with the TV deals and the movies. So we know Bret wanted to be an actor. He had aspirations to do so. So it's interesting that that didn't play a part in negotiations, that his heart, as we read with Chad last week, was so tied to WWF that he wanted to stay there for life. So he becomes sort of a sympathetic character. I know he gets painted in this light now as being demonized for being selfish, but if you really unpack the facts, he had no choice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, WWF at the time didn't have much pull in the Hollywood industry. You know, it wasn't going to be, the Canadian Hart Walker, Texas Ranger.
That's what he wanted to do.
Deal. Yeah.
He wanted it so bad.
It would have been fantastic to hear Bret Hart talking about beating up bad guys and doing his thing. But yeah, man, I think WCW would have been the smarter move this early on. Imagine the longevity he would have had in his career. At least it would have had, it would have been before Owen. It would have been, he would have had an opportunity to get his foot on the ground before bad booking, before Goldberg. Not too much before Goldberg, but I mean, there might not have been a need to bring Goldberg in that that hot if the Stone Cold thing didn't happen. There's so many different variables to it. It's absolutely insane. Yeah. So
our good buddy Meltzer continues in the newsletter and said one of the things that played a huge part is how Hart had complained in the past that he could stand in the way of going to WCW was the presence of Hulk Hogan. Yet apparently the final negotiations, McMahon talked to Hart about both Hogan and Savage's WCW's contracts coming due between now and then, and there potentially would be coming there in 1997. So that kind of played a part in why Bret didn't want to stay at first with WWF. So he took the risk and signed with them for a 20-year deal, but there was an expectation that it seemed like Savage and Hogan it's a foregone conclusion that both these guys would be coming back home. And obviously that didn't happen. We'll talk about it in the next newsletter in a second, but that played a part. And the relationship between Bret and Hogan at the time was tumultuous. Obviously, we know that there's a huge issue between the two of them. They have two different mindsets of how wrestling should work.
Yeah.
But man, two personalities that could not get along in the locker room, and it played a part in the negotiations for a future contract.
Yeah. It's crazy.
All right. So let's go here for a second, just quickly about AAA. And we know AAA's relationship with WCW at the time. We see a lot of talent coming over and working. But is it expected that all AAA wrestlers working for WCW will be given notice sometime this coming week to leave AAA for Promo Azteca Promotions after the split between Antonio Pena and Conan, which means that Eric Bischoff won't have access to the Mexican talent that he wanted to. So besides Conan, expected to leave are Super Callow, Rey Mysterio Jr., Lady Victoria, La Sorrentia, Super Crazy, Psychosis, Juventude Guerrero, Halloween, Damien, Natasha, and several others on the list. A who's who of Mexican wrestling in the 90s. WCW wouldn't have access to them. They had to develop a new relationship with Promo Azteca Promotions. The only reason I mention this is because it's eerily similar to Tony Khan finessing relationships with New Japan Pro Wrestling and also loosely with letting guys go to AAA and CMLL. And we heard about the FTR thing and the Andrade stuff. But even back in the 90s, there was hemming and hawing and figuring out who's benefiting by the booking. And here it is right now, Antonio Pena and Conan. Yeah,
I know it's insane, but I get people trying to protect their own company a little bit more, but I don't know, man, it's crazy. Could you imagine if they pulled Rey Mysterio and Conan this year and they just were done? Look at Rey still doing his thing in a huge way. It would have been insane.
Absolutely insane. And right now we have WCW as a virtual lock to break its all-time gate record for Hogan and Savage at Halloween Havoc, the event that we're covering today, live from Vegas. As of 5 days before the show, the advance was 5,755 tickets. And because of the high ticket prices, the gate was $171,920. The company's all-time record gate was set earlier this year at the Memorial House show in Buffalo. We talked about 193,000. So they're about to blow that out of the water up front. We know that it does actually have the actual record for it. So interesting to see that they're doing so well at the gate, not to the point where, they actually are at the same point that they are later in 97, but wow, there's a lot going on here.
Very, very much so. And especially, think about how tiny this gate is when you're talking about AEW busting these $1 million gates. And it's insanity that this is a record for them.
Meltzer also mentions in the newsletter the reason that Bischoff seemed off in announcing was because he was very nervous about how Bret Hart was going to handle his interview, since he knew WWF would want Hart to rub it in his face. We know the history with Medusa throwing the title belt. That was mentioned in the newsletter a few times. And that was why a lot of the contract disputes happened, because of the precedent set with Medusa. So here we are with Bret Hart. We know that Bret takes the high road here. He doesn't really mention WCW. He talks about having an offer from another company, but he doesn't mention in this Raw interview. So Eric Bischoff is breathing a sigh of relief.
Oh, yeah.
TNT started airing a new commercial with Sting as the star of the show, which pretty much says he'll end up as WCW's focal top babyface. So we know he's more of a tweener babyface in the term of the 90s wrestling, that the realism becomes blurring the line of who's good, who's bad. Specifically, the mold was set by Stone Cold in a lot of people's eyes, but Sting was being the anti-hero before an anti-hero actually existed in wrestling. And maybe you could speak to that a little bit as someone who grew up idolizing Sting.
Let me take the glasses off real quick so it could be, in my full Sting 1996 as we last saw him. But yeah, no, I always felt that, this year in WCW in general, the Scott Hall, Kevin Nash coming in, Sting being the way he became, I really think that was the initial start of the anti-heroes. You see it in the show tonight in Halloween Havoc. The NWO shirts are starting to sell. The hats are selling. People want the bad guys. People want to be with the bad guys. But then you got the anti-hero Sting, who's just like, fucking him out. He goes, sits in the rafters for a whole year, basically. It's insane, man.
And Meltzer was a little bit critical of Sting. He threw a little barb that I highlighted from the newsletter, and just want to put it out there because there were people a little skeptical of the change of Sting's character, because it was not a ripoff, not a direct ripoff of the Crow movie, but it was influenced heavily by a different character. And this is the quote from Meltzer that I thought would probably rub Steve Borden the wrong way if he read it today. He said, after all these years of trying to push him being Sting, pronouns pal, in that position with it never working, you think it might be time to give someone else a shot. Doesn't sound like he has a lot of faith in Sting being the guy. And we know that Sting is crucial to them having that run atop the wrestling ratings war. If not for Sting, there's no way Nitro is Nitro. WCW needed him to be the character he became, to be the focal point against the NWO. And that's what, like, the crux of the issue you had with the storyline that was at WrestleMania 31. Was that they painted him in this light that he was friendly with the NWO. And we know he's eventually in the Wolfpack and it gets sort of muddy. But the initial creation of this Crow character that Sting so proudly was a part of the show with is much different than the one they presented. And it whitewashed the whole history of how it happened. And it had to make WCW fans and you upset, where people that weren't watching at the time don't get it. Yeah.
No, and that's that. Not to be the guy that's always saying typical WWE booking, but that's they if it's not in their favor, which even the finish for that WrestleMania match was in their favor, but story wise, they don't give a shit. They didn't care to make it any better for Sting. They didn't care to paint that picture. They weren't getting Lex Luger coming out, and you know what I mean. Like they didn't put WCW out there. They just repackaged it in whatever the hell they thought it meant to fans, because they didn't give a shit, and it's a damn shame. Hate it.
Yeah, honestly, and as you guys have said on every episode, 24 episodes before this one, I grew up watching WWF before this, but as I'm seeing Sting develop his character and just how crucial he is to this storyline, I understand why it upsets people. And even for me, it didn't really make sense, because I remember watching that and being like, wasn't he supposed to be the main adversary for the New World Order? And here he is, just kind of getting a spot with DX. And it just was, again, just broad stroking the whole WCW NWO existence in a disrespectful manner. Not to mention Triple H going over is a whole other story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But come on. This whole next year is telltale. Like, you got Sting, like, literally staring from the rafters through these guys' souls, dropping down, just hitting people with fucking baseball bats and scorpion death drops left and right, taking out members of the NWO, literally kidnapping them. As he comes down, he grabs somebody and flies back up to the rafters with the, like, how are you going to put them, the NWO with Sting? Yeah.
Anyway, so we can talk about that more. If you guys want more, check out the episode of Sessions where they talk about the WrestleMania 31 match with Mike. Mike takes Tom to task about it. So Booker T has a back injury currently, so he's been limited in the ring over the weekend and isn't expected to be 100% by the pay-per-view time, which makes it a bad match on paper look much worse since he's the entire tag team. Again, throwing some shade at Stevie Ray. But this is probably why they took the belts off of them quickly and gave it to Public Enemy. I know they put it back on Harlem Heat, but it seemed like a weird booking decision that Public Enemy even got a run with the titles. A Booker T with a back injury is better than a lot of guys on the roster.
Yeah, it's even to this day.
100%. So there's a Hogan lawsuit going on. Just quickly, I'm going to gloss over this, and this is from it stemmed from September 1995. So there's a Hogan lawsuit in Minneapolis, and Hogan filed a lawsuit in January for extortion against Kathleen Kennedy, a former employee of his now defunct Pasta Mania restaurant in the Mall of America in Minneapolis, and her lawyer, Peter Johnson, saying they threatened to go to the police about sexual transgression. Kennedy claimed that on September 2nd, 1995, she was assaulted by Terry Bollea, who forcibly blah, 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 whole bunch of stuff going on. You guys can use your imagination.
I'm reading it. It's just fucking great.
So Kennedy's affidavit also stated, since the day of the letter, I've been advised by others of sexual misconduct by Mr. Bollea, throwing shade Hogan's way. This is 1996. Social media didn't exist, but you'd imagine this was bad press for WCW. The way to combat that, if it wasn't true, was to go at them and throw money at it with lawyers and say, fight it in court. And Hogan, Bollea, whatever you want to call him, claimed the contents and the timing of delivery of the letter were damaging to him both personally and professionally. He's attempting to get police to file charges against the lawyer. Whatever. The story doesn't matter. It's just bad press and bad timing for Hogan because his contract is coming up. Not that it matters, not that they're playing a part of this and figuring out, we don't want Hogan anymore, but just sort of under the surface a bit here. It just shows you the different time in wrestling where a lot of people didn't even know this was happening.
Yeah, I mean, Bischoff looks like he's okay with Hogan, but no, I mean, this is if this was to happen to anybody in this day and age, it would no matter what money you're making, it shuts you right up, and it's like you're done. That shit shouldn't be flying. But this is very interesting to read and very graphic. So make sure if you guys want to see it, go fucking find the newsletter and read it, man.
So the November 4th newsletter continues with more contract stuff, and we got the debut of Roddy Piper. Spoiler alert, as you guys probably saw in the graphic, Roddy Piper debuts in WCW in a really shocking manner, which was really awesome. So Roddy Piper agreed to an undisclosed deal with World Championship Wrestling, and a debut that saw the 3-hour satellite time actually expire before the two finished talking. So if you guys are watching with us, you saw that they were still talking, going back and forth, and the announcers are trying to time them, and they're like, we have to go off the air, and it was chaos in the worst way possible because you weren't able to see the debut. And imagine this happened today. People would lose their shit. We did get the next night Nitro. We saw the finishing touches on that promo, but Piper and Hogan just extended the time. They're probably supposed to go 10, 15 minutes. They continued for 25. So
that's crazy.
We get Piper, and this was a surprise to everybody involved. A lot of people up into the show did not know that he was coming in at all. So I asked you, Mike, I know we're going to get to it when he debuts from Halloween Havoc, but did this have the effect on you? Were you like, finally someone else is coming over that can make a huge impact, someone who can rival Hogan as this other big bad that actually took Hogan to task in every way impossible? Every time they were in a feud together, he was an equal.
Yeah. At the time, it probably wasn't as big as it is now, like looking back at it, but I was jacked up for Roddy Piper to be in WCW, man. I was ready to bust out some bagpipes, slap on a leather jacket and a kilt and just start going to town. But I mean, this is huge. And honestly, story-wise, this is probably a huge story to happen in 96. Way bigger than my 9-year-old, 8-year-old self could imagine. So yeah, man, I thought this was great. Obviously we'll touch on it when we get to it, but I thought it was fantastic, minus the technical difficulties of timing. It was fucking great.
So the other really interesting thing in the newsletter was the fact that Hogan signed a 3-year deal with WCW only 4 days before Halloween Havoc was to go on the air, spurning a supposed 5-year offer from the WWF. So we know that he was up in the air, Savage was up in the air, Bret Hart could have been switching teams as well. I'm thinking about Hogan right now, and Meltzer mentions this in the newsletter about how he potentially be making a surprise appearance in the 1998 Royal Rumble, 1997 Royal Rumble. I'm sorry about that. and he was claiming to have received a monstrous offer from WWF, said to be $5 million per year, which would have been theoretically, if you choose to believe the stories, as I mentioned, started with a surprise appearance and winning the Rumble, going on to a WWF title reign, going into WrestleMania 13 and further on. That has me unpacking more of the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
What happens with the World Championship? We see how it goes on. WrestleMania 13, obviously Austin and Bret are not involved in the title picture. WrestleMania 14, you get that crowning moment in Boston, Stone Cold over Shawn Michaels. If Hogan wedges himself in there as a heel and you're paying him $5 million per year, you kind of have to. What does that look like? I feel like someone has to take the back burner. Maybe we don't get The Rock. Maybe we don't get Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Who is falling to the wayside?
Man, that's a really hard one because The Rock, The Rock's got so much charisma. Like, I think he would have gotten over no matter what, because look at what he's doing now. He's transcended being a wrestler. He's one of the only people that came out of wrestling and now known as like the movie star guy, not the wrestling guy. That never happened for anybody else. So I think the Rock would have been good. Maybe Austin. I don't know, man. It's a tough one. Maybe Austin would have helped him shoot into the Stone Cold era too. If you had a heel Hogan there and Austin was the guy going after him. But you know who I'm gonna say? Vince McMahon. I think Vince McMahon as a character would not have happened if Hulk Hogan went back to WWF.
Yeah, because if Bret was... So if we were to assume everything falls a different way, you get Bret in WCW, Hogan WWF, Savage WWF, there's no Mr. McMahon character.
No,
because there's no need for it.
Yeah.
The Mr. McMahon character was just an answer to the Bret Hart scenario and making the best of the situation, having to give an explanation as to what happened. And it was a happy accident that the Attitude Era it's like the Big Bang of the Attitude Era at that moment. There's no way to look at it from the way that we are right now and being the same wrestling universe that we are. If this happens, this is like one of the craziest scenarios of if something just changed in a little way, wrestling may look completely different today.
Yeah, 100%. It's mind-boggling.
So the other part that played a huge role in all of this was Randy Savage. So going into Randy Savage, as of press time of this newsletter, which is November 4th, this is following Halloween Havoc. We saw, obviously, Savage loses the match. He's not really ridden off TV, but he does lose in dramatic fashion. He's definitely a secondary thought with the Piper and the Hogan thing. They seem to be moving on. And Meltzer continues, the future of Randy Savage with WCW at press time was questionable as the two sides hadn't agreed to terms after Savage and Eric Bischoff spent several hours throughout the week attempting to put together a deal. Savage's negotiation leverage with WCW was greatly reduced when Hogan had signed with them. He was due to get a huge offer because they didn't want to lose both. Yeah. But the fact that Hogan stayed, they were like, all right, Savage, go ahead. You can go back. I think Randy Savage would have fit. I don't think he would have overstepped. I think he would have been a nice complimentary piece in WWF. That's the guy I kind of want to see in this universe, 96, 97, 98 WWF. In that roster, I think he would have benefited greatly. And I think we didn't get the best of Randy Savage in WWF. It took him too long to get back. And it's such a shame because we're pining for it. You talked about him getting the Hall of Fame announcement, the figure announcement, getting him back in the line. I feel like we didn't get to enjoy as fans him in the later stages of career like we get to do with Chris Jericho nowadays. Yeah,
no, I wholeheartedly agree. Not that Savage's WCW time was terrible, but I think maybe he would have gotten one last good run being, everybody loves the fucking Macho Man. Like, we're here celebrating a Slim Jim themed pay-per-view event because of the Macho Man. The dude was a draw. Dude worked well. He was one of the top tier guys in the day. Seeing him go to WWF, it would have been very interesting to have him clashing with some of the talent over there. Again, but like for the first time for a lot of them, would have been insane. Madness.
Yeah, madness, if you will. And the rest of the newsletter goes into Piper, and I'm going to read you some of the stuff here because it is fascinating that negotiations for all these guys were going on at the same exact time. So while negotiations with Piper were going on, they were going on with Bret Hart on both sides, and WCW's loss of Bret Hart in a wooing battle with WWF isn't thought to have any impact one way or another on the Piper negotiations. On Friday, word reached McMahon of the deal, although not from Piper. Over the past 7 years, there have been numerous attempts to WCW to sign Piper, all which resulted in Piper returning to the World Wrestling Federation. That almost become an inside joke in the industry that Piper would negotiate with WCW just to get the word out to WWF, and they'd bring him back for more money. On the WWF Live Wire show the next morning, Jim Ross's hotline teased calling the hotline to find out the wrestling plans of Roddy Piper and if he would sign with a rival organization. At the time, everybody laughed at it. It wasn't actually going to happen. And we talk about the history of Piper. He was exclusively with WWF since leaving Jim Crockett Promotions in 1983. At the time, he was the working president and substituted for the suspended Razor Ramon in a combination match parking lot brawl with Goldust at the WrestleMania 12 the year before, which is very memorable. So we also saw him getting the broken hand. That was a very memorable moment. One of my favorite WrestleMania moments that is looked upon fondly now, but I remember people at the time were a little bit critical. Obviously, they used the OJ stuff, but Piper, and we'll talk about it, his presentation at the end of Halloween Havoc. There's something about him that almost fits better in the 90s. It's almost like he aged with fine wine. That it surprised me that he wasn't a bigger star within, I guess, our fandom as far as who he was. Maybe it's because he didn't want to be world champion, but he definitely could have been.
Oh yeah, easily. I want to save a lot of my words for when it happens, but I like, as he calls himself, he's an icon, man. And I've always been a Piper guy. This might be my favorite version of Piper, is this WCW run right here, because he gets vicious and in a good way. And I love it.
So to finish up the newsletter, Meltzer says, many within WCW are seeing Piper as something of a replacement for Randy Savage, whose contract expires in a few weeks and still hasn't been signed, and two sides can't agree. And it seems like Savage is foregone to leave, which we know he stays. Savage's loss to Hogan was positioned that if need be, could be writing Savage out of the storyline. So Piper probably at this point will mean more than Savage when it comes to one pay-per-view buy against Hogan, but it's doubtful he'll have the long-term legs because even more limited than Savage in the ring at this point due to injuries. He won't go on the road, and the idea for him is to work maybe 3 or 4 pay-per-view matches during a year and do interviews regularly on Nitro, where his name, charisma, and familiarity will solidify WCW's hold on the older audience, like Tom. Maybe Tom would have been watching, that controls Monday's ratings. And it's not solidified at this point, but it seems like we're going to get Hogan and Piper at Starrcade in Nashville, 12/29/1996, our final episode. Piper, Hogan, man. This newsletter was absolutely fascinating to me, and I'm going to go back to the picture of Piper debuting here. You talked about it. Magnetic.
Yeah.
Charismatic.
Look at the hair.
Fits the aesthetic of the realism perfectly.
Yeah, and he, like, who else besides Sting is going to come out and, like, Piper kind of says, like, fuck, I'm not here for WCW, I'm not here for the NWO, I'm here for you, Hogan. It's one of those things, and it's like, talk about anti-heroes.
Yeah.
Like, he just comes in fucking white hot, like, I make more money than you, I do everything better than you, I'm a bigger movie star than you. It's fantastic, man.
And Hogan put him over, too.
Yeah.
While Hogan gets, he'll put over the guys he wants to put over, but give him some credit here. He presented from the jump, making Piper look like the equal, because he understands that on both sides, and Piper alluded to in the promo. If not for Piper and people wanted to see him get his ass kicked, people wouldn't be cheering Hogan as vehemently as they were. It goes hand in hand. You can't have a good bad guy without a good guy without a good bad guy. It's the Joker Batman syndrome.
Absolutely.
All right, you ready to get our fix and talk about Halloween Havoc, man? I'm so stoked for it. Let's get our fix. All right, here we are, WCW Halloween Havoc, October 27th, 1996, live from Las Vegas, Nevada, MGM Grand Garden Arena. Popping up the results here. Our current champs are as follow. We have Hogan is still our world champ. He won it back at Hog Wild 8/10/96. We already knew that. You've been watching every episode of Shot Nostalgia. Our U.S. champion is somehow Ric Flair. We know he's out for the rest of the year. Still hasn't got his surgery yet for that torn labrum. We're going to see what they do with the U.S. title. It's not really hinted here. On Nitro, they talk about it a little bit. Our tag team champions are Harlem Heat. They won it back on October 5th, taking it back from Public Enemy. Our world television champion, Lord Steven Regal. We'll see his return as champion on Nitro, the first time since he's won the title, which they played off like he was out defending the title elsewhere, and they could play that game all they want. He just wasn't on TV, and
yeah, we know better.
Tony Khan's book, man. That's Tony Khan. That's Tony Khan's booking strategy. Just win the title and see you later.
See you later, man.
And of course, our cruiserweight champion is Rey Mysterio. Won it back on July 8th, 1996, and it's a good segue. That's our opening match here. Our host Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, Dusty Rhodes lead us in. And let me just say, Dusty Rhodes' shirt is so goddamn tight. They couldn't mix in another X for him on that XXL shirt. He was struggling in that shirt.
Yeah, sweet Seth the Frath. The thing is a little too tight.
He was struggling big time with that shirt.
It was good though.
You take the lead on this match here, man. This is the opening match, and this is man, Chef's Kiss. Demolenko taking on Rey Mysterio for the Cruiserweight Championship. Holy shit. Malenko is our 1997 PWI Wrestler of the Year. Deserves it in 1997, but he also may deserve it in 1996. He's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, talk about carrying the undercard from the main events. Like every time this guy comes out to the ring, eyes are glued. This is no exception. These two beat the shit out of each other. Rey is doing fantastic. This is some of my favorite Rey Mysterio moments. I love when he takes the old mask off, or the mask he's wearing, and puts the new mask on. You kind of get a glimpse of his face. And was it Zabisco? We get to see this slime ball's face finally. Like he's such a dirty announcer. I love it so much. But like just badass back and forth action, beating the piss out of each other. And you would think Rey's in this big shining glory to win this match because he finally gets his mask back. He's taking down the Iceman, one move at a time. Fucking beautiful exchanges. But Dean Malenko gets him with that super doctor bomb, man.
Crazy, dude. That was
absolutely
insane
crazy.
Spot.
Yeah, and he gets the 1, 2, 3. I was shocked. I was like, wow, because I try to start fresh with these, not get it into all the details. I try to watch it with fresh eyes. But man, Malenko looked like $1 million coming out of this, and so did Mysterio. And that's come on, what do you want more out of a match? Like this is the best thing. Maybe in 1996. This is great.
Yeah, the two of these guys, they just work so seamlessly together, and we see a lot of story being told throughout this match. The match went 18 minutes and 29 seconds, but it flew by. That's how good it was. I mean, you name the spot, they did it. Like any spot you could think between planches and Hurricane Ranas and going for submissions. Malenko can work any style, grounder in the air. You mentioned before we had the super doctor bomb. They worked on his back all night. Like that's the craziest part about the whole match was Rey Mysterio they were focused on that body part, and it was very Bret Hart adjacent. Like he was doing exactly what Bret Hart would do, working on a body part. And that it's very rare for a guy with a submission finisher to do a move that's an impact move to get the win. And what would look big enough to defeat anybody?
Yeah.
That doctor bomb looked like it should defeat. Someone should be picking up that move. And I don't want to see people taking that on a regular basis, but in a big spot, that's why these huge superplexes and things off the top rope, it emphasizes for effect. And in the moment, it was it. Like I watched, there's no way Rey's kicking out of that. And it was over. And Malenko got a huge pop at the end, which it just shows the respect that the live audience has for him. He is a heel. Everyone loves Rey Mysterio and what he brings to the table, but you can't help but just pop for the match itself. And people are just excited how it ended. And Demolenko gets his just due. And I don't think in the grand scheme of wrestling that people talk about Malenko in the light that he should be. He is there's not a lot of guys that can hold a candle to the work rate that he has with every different type of opponent. We see him with the cruiserweights, but even on the technical side, wrestling guys like Eddie and Benoit, he can hold his own. I mean, he's not a smaller guy, but damn, the guy can go.
This might go down as the best, most spot-on hot take in the world. I think Dean Malenko is the most underrated pro wrestler from our lifetime, bar none. I mean, the guy is just bananas how great he is, and this match is one of the many proving points of it. It's insane. But yeah, like I mean, this could main event any show, and I'd be a very happy camper. I think no matter who won, they would have got that big of a pop because it was such a damn bar burner of a match. Like, this was great shit.
You're right. I mean, everything about this match spoke to me like 2022. And I think a lot of the work rate we see, it feels watered down because we see so much of it on a weekly basis on TV. And you and I spoke about it on the wrap up a lot of times where Darby goes out there and throws his body around where people, it's hard to get the same reaction to without stepping it up, where you have to kill yourself and go through barrels and come off a ladder and go on the steel steps and step it up. But when you're watching this match and you put in perspective that it is from 25 plus years ago, and you see these guys going out and doing the things they do, whether it be the springboard Hurricane Rana, the springboard somersault senton, the back superplexes, everything that Rey Mysterio did seemed like it was a video game. And same thing with Demolenko. Everything was so methodical, so smooth. The selling too. This was a masterclass in showing someone who's going to wrestling school. How do you sell? How do you get people invested in a match? How do you start off a crowd hot for an event without giving them too much as far as like, you know what they're going to get the rest of the night with the main event and that style. That's why the Cruiserweight set the tone. It got everybody off their feet, got people excited for the product. And I say it all the time. You come for the stars, you stay for the in-ring product that Demolenko, Rey Mysterio, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero were giving you on a nightly basis here in WCW, whether it was Saturday night, eventually Thunder, these pay-per-views, Nitro. These guys were killing it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, no, couldn't put it better myself, man. This was the meat in the sandwich, always.
This might be the match of the year, and I know we've been saying that, but watching this match, I watched it 3 times. That's because that's how impressed I was with this match, and I was like, I have to decide, because I think you and I at the end of this will be doing matches of the year and angles of the year. We'll come up with like a superlative list and do an episode for a catch-all for Shot Nostalgia just to put an end cap on it. This is up there, man. Not to give away the spoiler, but going back to what you said, though, about being underrated, I think that's a lot of, we use the word fed brain, but indoctrination of this WWF style of booking. I think a lot of people think of Dean Malenko, how he was presented in that WWF world, where he came in with the Radicals. He was presented as the light heavyweight champion. He never was on the same playing field as Benoit or Eddie Guerrero, or even Perry Saturn. He was always looked at as the 4th best Radical. And I'm guilty of it as well. Watching him, I knew how good he was watching him go in the ring, but he was presented as a boring character. And I think what WCW did so well was, Malenko wasn't the most charismatic guy. He didn't have the best mic skills. They use him in the most appropriate way, which is open the show, use him as a mat technician, but also can keep up with the high flyers and get people to react with his actions in the ring. And I don't think he ever got that opportunity in WWF.
No, absolutely. And yeah, man, it's just a shame. Like, I mean, he outshined everybody in this match or on this card. Like this was the match of not just the night, the week, and possibly the whole year. It was insane.
Yeah, man. And Rey Mysterio too, want to give him his props as well. The guys continue to do it at a high level still to this day, and he looks better than ever nowadays. But Rey Mysterio was groundbreaking as far as that style of wrestling in a big promotion like WCW or WWF. I mean, credit where it's due. Became eventually the world champion multiple times over in WWE because of his persistence and his ability to resonate with the fans. An undersized guy, a groundbreaking performer that started at this level. I mean, this is truly revolutionary stuff that we're watching. I'm not speaking in hyperbole. This is truly, if you guys are not watching this, if you're not going to watch the full show, you just want the recap, this is a match you must watch as a wrestling guy. It's a bucket list match for pro wrestling fans.
100%. Better than most shit you'll see in this day and age. This is history, man. This is like watching, World War II happen on the History Channel. You're like, goddamn, pal.
All right, so this match next, I mentioned Eddie Guerrero, so his Radical brethren eventually down the line takes on Diamond Dallas Page. And this match was 13 minutes and 38 seconds. It was a decent match. DDP is white hot here. He's starting to come into his own. Eddie Guerrero is still sort of floundering. I mean, coming off the U.S. title reign with Ric Flair and that feud, but he still feels like he's still finding his footing. The crowd isn't reacting the same way that we eventually see in WWE, but this is over the Battle Bowl ring. This has been what we talked about all these months ago, and they're supposed to be fighting over it. And Tony Schiavone is like, I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what it's for anymore. He's just completely transparent with the audience, and we're all sitting here because I think DDP was supposed to get that world title shot, never got it. lost the ring. The ring was like involved in Hacksaw Jim Duggan's feud. It just disappeared. But I have to say, it's good to see Eddie back on our TV. We haven't seen him in a bit. And the two of these guys went back and forth. It wasn't Eddie's best match. It wasn't DDP's best match, but it certainly wasn't a bad match by any means. And it's definitely worth watching. The Diamond Cutter is the finish here, as you probably already know. It's getting over with the crowd. They popped really huge for it. It was an anticlimactic finish. But coming to know this, Eddie did break a rib during the match, which kind of explains why it was a little bit slowed down. And DDP took care of him. So we didn't get to see the best effort from Eddie Guerrero because working with a broken rib. If you've ever broken a rib, you know how hard it is to move around and breathe. Yeah. So the fact that they went almost 50 minutes is kind of amazing in its own right.
No, absolutely. A very anticlimactic Diamond Cutter at the end, but I think it was because of the broken rib. Even the announcer's like, Eddie landed on his hands. He was trying to block it. And that was definitely because he had a fucking broken rib. And as they were doing the pin, I was like, he's not going to kick out. Nobody kicks out of the Diamond Cutter. Like, it's such a protected finish, man. It's perfect. Yeah. But, I did really enjoy a lot. It wasn't the best match on either men's part, but I thought it was enjoyable. And I thought it was really cool to see. You're starting to see DDP get more and more into his own each show, each pay-per-view. And this is like kind of getting to the DDP. Like, we're getting there so close. It's still got a little more burn time left to go, but the crowd, everybody throwing up the diamond already. They're getting into it, and it's still a fucking perfect finisher, man. Just a grade A finisher. It's
great, and I that's a perfect example of using it to get yourself over. And DDP, we talked about at the beginning of the year, he's a great case in point about how to grow in just 12 months' time and come into your own. We saw he was this clunky character that was coming out with all the tchotchkes, the cigar and the necklace and the bracelets, anything to take attention off of like what he was missing intangibly. He was trying to put it tangibly on his body, but as time goes on, the Diamond Cutter goes over. He starts to find himself in the ring. The fans are reacting to him, and then it becomes this momentum-based thing where it starts collecting. As the ball's rolling down the hill, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then he's just undeniable as the People's Champion in 1997. We're not going to be doing it for Shot of Nostalgia, but I think I'm going to continue the ride. I want to see where this goes.
Yeah, no, we have to. I mean, not as Shot of Nostalgia, obviously, but as pro wrestling fans, we really have to. I think there's so much good stuff ahead, and we're hitting that stride, man. We're going up and up and up and away.
And so Nick Patrick had the ring in his back pocket the whole time, gave it to DDP. That crooked Nick Patrick had the ring, so apparently he stole it. I don't know. It's like a very disjointed storyline. Can we just get DDP his title shot by now, please?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is the really shit gimmick.
All right, take the lead here on our next match. We had the Giant taking on Jeff Jarrett, which wasn't supposed to be the case. This was supposed to be Ric Flair in this spot against the Giant, but obviously Ric Flair tore his labrum in Japan, so now we get Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I will say this. This is probably a really good showcase for both guys. I didn't think Jarrett did bad. I'm not the biggest Jeff Jarrett fan, especially in '96. He was one of the people I could not stand the most. But I mean, there's some decent back and forth until the shit goes all up across the fan, like it always does when you got an NWO member and Four Horsemen people out there. I mean, Flair comes out, he's yelling. You got. It just turns into chaos, like, and not in a fun way. And it was just a really, really awkward finish. Flair low blow the Giant. The ref seen it. The ref calls for the DQ, and it's just, like it was 9 minutes 54 seconds. It wasn't the greatest thing. It wasn't the worst thing. But yeah, I mean, Flair doing the DQ. You get the tease for the Horseman. Arn's wearing a fucking hog wild jacket.
The one thing I want to pay homage to is the consistency in the storytelling. And you had to be watching in full and know the full story, but the ending of the match. So the Giant, obviously back in April, where the Giant won the world title by stopping the figure four from Ric Flair with a chokeslam. He tries to do the same thing with Jeff Jarrett here. So there's continuity that's being built here. And we see a lot of the U.S. title being passed around. I think maybe they don't even know where it's going at this point because obviously it was on Flair and they have to figure it out. Doesn't seem like it's a priority. They don't really care. It's being tossed around in this match, and Giant stole the U.S. belt, and Nick Patrick was involved in it.
Yeah.
So again, they're making the best of it. Both these guys deserve to be on the card. Jeff Jarrett, who just debuted, there's no way he couldn't be on the card. The fact that you have these guys here, you might as well use them. The match wasn't great, as you mentioned, but a DQ finish, which means we have to take a shot at nostalgia. But this is a far different Giant we're seeing. It's the standard Giant match, but the fact that he wasn't squashing somebody, I don't know. It just kind of shows you he joins the NWO and loses all his momentum. He was an unstoppable force. And I know it was like built in where he was just beating guys just to beat guys. But this is the same dude that was world champion for majority of the year. Same guy that had a meaningful feud where he got the better of Macho Man for most of the year. I don't know. For him to be taken to the limit with Jeff Jarrett and need a DQ to beat him, I don't know.
No, you know what? It's like the best way to describe how the Giant is right now in this show is he's like the guy that worked his ass off, got a promotion, and then like started eating McDonald's every night. He just starts slowly losing what brought him to the table and what made him such an important, person. And it takes away from not only the character, but from the whole fucking vibe. Imagine if they did this to Kenny Omega when he was, the champ. And like Kenny's like, oh, I got, the TNA belt. I got the AAA belt. I got the AEW belt. And like Kenny starts getting fat and like lazy. Like he's, it's and then turns into like Ben Stiller at the end of fucking Dodgeball. He's like, fuck
Chuck Norris. Yeah, so highlight of the match for me was Arn Anderson wearing the Hog Wild jacket. If I'm going to check out eBay, I found the shirts. People are reprinting them, and I know there's some Instagram accounts that put them on flash sales, and they disappear to avoid the copyright infringement.
We need an OG one. We need a
I want the OG
original.
Right, that's exactly what I want.
Woo. All right,
let's take a shot of nostalgia here for this DQ finish.
Well, my shot of nostalgia this weekend is brought to you by our great sponsors of Slim Jim, who just gave away a monster truck with a Macho Man hat on it to some lucky fan in Michigan. And dude, fun story. Somebody found the top of the hat from the fucking monster truck online, and they bought it and they're restoring it. So I think that's one of the greatest like refurbished stories of all time wrestling.
That's amazing.
History.
Where and how was it? Like, and do you know the amount of money
I think the guy got it for under like $300.
What?
Yeah, not the whole truck, just the hat.
No, but I need that. That's game used, man.
No, absolutely. So I had to pick up Savage Slim Jims, which are like a shot fatter, in the mouth.
A little fatter.
Here's your typical Slim Jim, your thin Slim Jim. This is a shot Slim Jim. Wow. So each time we do a shot, I'm taking a bite of this big one that could probably, I think they use these as baton in like Switzerland or something. Nip into it, yeah. Oh.
I think they're using that for tomorrow during the strap match with Drew McIntyre and Karrion Kross. I'm not sure.
I like it a lot.
So our next match here is Syxx and Chris Jericho, Sean Waltman's WCW pay-per-view debut. This is another match involving the New World Order. Nick Patrick at ringside. It's a feeling out process. Jericho playing the underdog babyface. Typical Jericho match. Like if you saw Jericho and X-Pac work in 2001 WWF, you're familiar with the match. It's exactly what you'd expect. Aside from the shenanigans with Nick Patrick and all the other stuff, this was supposed to be one of those matches with a fast count, and the announcers really sold it, but it wasn't a fast count. It was a 2 count, left the ring. It was weird. It seemed like someone didn't get the message. It seemed a little bit weird. The commentary team really sold it because they want Nick Patrick to be getting heat, and they want Syxx to only get the win because he was screwing Chris Jericho, because Chris Jericho is building some momentum too. So it's definitely some unsteady ground as far as booking goes. They didn't want either guy to lose, but they also didn't want to do another DQ finish.
Yeah.
They wanted to save us from taking another shot here 25 years later.
Who wins with the spinning heel kick? It's insanity. It looked great, but the pin looked like shit afterwards. And like you said, I don't think somebody missed the memo. Somebody didn't get the AOL instant message. Or CompuSave computers who were sponsoring everything.
I went back in Cage Match to look at the time these guys wrestled. And if you guys are not familiar with Cage Match, it's a great database of matches that guys work together. You could find the dates, and it gets confusing because house shows are included as well. But Jericho and Sean Waltman in a lot of capacities worked a lot together. And a lot of the star ratings, and not just Meltzer, they're rated by Cage Match and fans at large. It's not just Meltzer, so don't just rip on me because it's Meltzer's ratings. A lot of those ratings don't live up to the billing. And you think these two guys, two of the better workers in the history of wrestling, would go out there and have a lot of 5-star matches similar to Rey Mysterio and Demolenko going out there and killing it. It seemed for some reason Chris Jericho and X-Pac couldn't get in the ring and kind of sync up. Like a lot of these matches are 2.5, 3 stars, short matches. And I know 2001 WWF during the invasion and all that stuff wasn't really known for their work rate. Either was WCW at this time as far as storytelling goes, but man, it just feels like these guys just always miss the boat. They happen to be on 2 different frequencies. They couldn't sync up, but if they did ever, it seems like they could kill it.
Yeah. No, I mean, come on. You're talking about 2 of wrestling's greatest small guys, right? If you want to call them that. It's insane that they couldn't have better chemistry in the ring. Absolutely wild. But I think just some people just don't click. And they maybe just did not click in the ring, and they just couldn't, they weren't good dance partners.
Yeah, and I just think it wasn't like a bad match. If you guys watch this, you know what I'm talking about. And
yeah.
This match, it wasn't a bad match, but also its comparison to Demolenko and Rey Mysterio, it feels like when I saw them coming out, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This will be Six's debut. It has to be amazing. And it just really wasn't. It didn't even go 10 minutes. It just felt like it was just there. And I feel like both these guys are better than that.
Yeah, it looked like Six stole fake Diesel's hair and came out and he was like, "What's up?" Doing his shtick. I don't. You know what I didn't like either was NWO guys starting off in the crowd, then coming down all the way to the top of the entrance ramp, and then walking down the entrance ramp. Just come down in the ring, pull John Moxley. Just walk down. Who cares? What do you guys are already infiltrating the space. Like, it looks stupid. Like, okay, we're going to come down here, we're going to parade to the entrance ramp, then we're going to walk from the entrance ramp all the way back. And it's like, why? Like, what did that accomplish? It was just stupid.
All right, so you take the lead here. Lex Luger, Arn Anderson. Oh. Tell me about it.
Man, yeah, neither guy, I mean, this is not a great match by any means necessary, which is sad because this is one of the last times we see Arn in the ring, right?
Yeah, it's his final pay-per-view match. Yeah.
Fuck. What a that's like buying the $10,000 firework and it turns and goes. That's it. That is it, man. It was way too long. It was like 12 minutes. It was just, I don't know. It wasn't nothing. This was my skipping match, like if I had to skip a match, this was going to be it. And that's heartbreaking because it is the last time we see Glock Anderson in a pay-per-view event as a in-ring competitor.
Yeah, career-ending neck injury that happens not too long after this. I can't remember a lot of times that Arn Anderson submits too, so this is a huge rub for Lex Luger. So, I mean, the torture rack is a brutal-looking submission, so it's no shame in tapping to the torture rack, but seems Arn Anderson was protected for a while here in WCW as we watch, and NWO got the better of the Horsemen, but at the end of the day, everybody else sort of looked weak next to the Horsemen. They were like the 1B under the NWO, but Luger got the better of him, made him look kind of weak here. 12 minutes and 14 seconds. And yeah, Arn Anderson gets laid out in the ring and Flair and Jarrett come out to check on him and they're doing the stretcher job. Whole deal here.
Yeah. No, and you know what it was is he took off the goddamn Hog Wild jean jacket. He should have wrestled it. He would
yes. If you
he would have won. You can't put the torture rack on.
You can't.
On any, yeah,
the arms are too big. Yes.
Yeah, it does not compute. It does not work.
All right. So the next match here are some more Horseman brethren. We got Chris Benoit and Steve McMichael with Woman and Deborah at ringside taking on the Faces of Fear, who have Jimmy Hart in their corner. This is one of those shorter matches as well. This is just kind of a standard match. Benoit and McMichael get the win here. Yeah. Ming doing a lot of selling, which is weird because we don't really see a lot of selling on Ming's end. He gets hit with the briefcase. Benoit won with the swan dive headbutt, which to me, he didn't really use as a finisher a lot of time. It's more of a setup move. Devastating finisher. I mean, we know that the damage it does on him, and that's why Bryan Danielson doesn't do the headbutt as much as he does anymore, and he'll break it out for special occasions. But a lot of the damage done on Benoit's head was from this move, you know. So this it
Yeah.
looks brutal on both ends, going out there and full belly flopping across the ring, nailing the headbutt.
He was brutal with it though, up until
Yeah.
I mean, even late in his WWF career, WWE career, he was hitting those headbutts like full force, no protection whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, that's going to rattle your brain, but as devastating as it was to his life, it was more devastating to his partner or his opponents in the ring. Damn it.
I think the most devastating Benoit match is the one where Edge won that first Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 21. I think about that where he had the stitches in his head from another match. I think he wrestled JBL or something, the build up to WrestleMania 21.
Yeah.
And he had staples in his head that got cut open. I think he was headbutting Edge and it got cut open itself. And the sell job, he was doing the whole like Devon Dudley seizure when he fell off the ring. Man, they were trying to establish Edge as this like dastardly heel. I remember watching that being like sick to my stomach with Benoit's sell job. And I know he's just making people feel a certain way, but damn, it was tough to watch. And that was kind of the same here as well. Like you kind of see some of the selling with the headbutt and he doesn't pull any punches. He's from a different generation as far as learning how to wrestle.
He's a real man's man.
So Barbarian throwing Benoit around was interesting. The two of those guys coexisting. After the match, the Dungeon of Doom jumped the rail. They helped face Saphir lay out both Benoit and McMichael. And since Flair left with Double A to the hospital, there's nobody left to save them. And Sullivan says something to woman along the lines of, I'm the man. You guys can't get away from the Dungeon of Doom. And here you go. So Horseman, not a good night for the Horseman, despite getting the win here.
No, and like enough of the woman Dungeon of Doom. Like we're so fading out so fast.
This is the AFO version that we're getting. The Andrade and Hardy Family Office of 1996.
I love it.
All right, so we have the World Tag Team Championship on the line. This is a huge moment for not only the New World Order, but WCW at large. It's the Harlem Heat taking on the Outsiders. Take the lead here.
Man, this was great. Not great, but it was great. I don't know if it's because we lost Scott Hall, but just I pay so much attention to his mannerisms when he's in the matches now. Like more, not that I didn't before, but like I doubled down on it. Like I love the little oohs and like, you know, he plays such a slime ball, fucking goofball wrestler. Then like you love it. Like he's got the character. It just like, he's spitting on people. He's you know the toothpick in the face. It's just so damn good, man. But it was decent up until again shenanigans by the NWO started happening, and man, it was crazy. But they get down to the nitty gritty. Hall's got what's it called? Parker's cane starts just beating the shit out of who is it? Stevie Ray, and it just and it's done so like in you know. Scott Hall rolls over, covers him, gets the 1, 2, 3. I mean, a lot of decent in 13 minutes, but not a whole lot of greatness, and a really slimy way to take those titles off of Harlem Heat. But at least they did it on TV.
100%. And according to history and what people say and hearsay as far as booking goes, the way it was supposed to go down was Harlem Heat was supposed to drop the titles to the Steiners, and then the Outsiders were supposed to beat the Steiners, but instead they cut the middleman out, and they just had the Outsiders take on Harlem Heat. Reason being, I think they wanted to wait for the payoff with the Steiners being the bigger tag team, and they wanted the big marquee matchup between the Steiners and the Outsiders, and it may not resonate the same way with us today, but at the time, they wanted to build up to this big tag team title match, but they were impatient. They wanted the titles on the New World Order tag team. The Outsiders crowned them for the first time. They were there before Hogan, and Hogan is, as far as heels go, Hogan was champion. It was a matter of time before the tag titles found their way on them. So you mentioned it. I mean, we saw a lot of stuff go on in the match. Other things I want to mention I put in my notes was Razor chants were popping up for the first time. New World Order getting a lot of positive reaction. The pop was pretty significant when they won this match.
Yeah.
And people are starting to not only want to see them, but the announcers are kind of accepting that they're not good guys in the universe and kayfabe wise, but they're accepting that fans do want to see them. They kind of no sell the fans and say, these people just, you know, they like bad guys, and like they really acknowledge it instead of ignoring it.
Yeah. And, you know, I think a lot again, a lot of the success of the NWO is because of the outsiders. Like, everybody could love Hulk Hogan, as much as they wanted being a bad guy, but these guys came in and this is their one gimmick. They were the same kind of characters they came out of WWF with, but now they're like they're doubling down so fucking hard. So you got Scott Hall being, super, super, slime bally, like I said before, and like Nash loves it. He's laughing. He's being Nash, the Nash we know and love. Those are the guys that carry the NWO because everybody's like, man, those dudes are cool. And as everybody says, they're oozing with machismo, man. Like everybody wanted to be the outsiders, baby. Everybody wanted to.
Yeah, this was interesting placement on the card to have this match and then the main event follow. It seemed like this match should have been put somewhere else to kind of let the crowd get down a little bit. But the crowd was hyped up for the main event. You had Hogan taking on Savage in the main event. Hogan coming out to the ring with DiBiase. Hogan, as you guys can see in the art of our show, Hogan's wearing his Three Ninjas toupee to the ring.
A very nice toupee, though. Because when they showed him in the crowd, I thought it was legit, too.
Same.
Legit. I was like, damn, because it looked like hair plugs.
Yeah.
And I was like, Hogan got some hair plugs for it. I totally forgot about the spot from that.
So he looked ridiculous. And the last time we saw Savage before this, I mean, now he's wearing the Halloween colors and he's decked out in the Slim Jim stuff.
My favorite best Macho Man costume I think ever, with the Slim Jim and silver going in between the frills and tassels.
Snap into it all over. Yeah,
that should have been this. If this figure was that thing, I would have been all over it. And that was the costume Slim Jim gave away if you collected enough wrappers.
Oh.
I swear, I think I probably ate a pound of Slim Jims, or maybe 2 pounds. I was 99% Slim Jim at one point.
Amazing. And you mentioned the monster truck that they found the hat and they were refurbishing. He comes out with that, which is really awesome. It feels like a really big deal. And this match, as we know, Savage and Hogan are not in their prime here. They're not able to do the work rate the Demolenko and the Rey Mysterios have here, but the story is great. We get all the chaos, the typical New World Order match. Miss Elizabeth heads down to ringside. She has a concerned look on her face at some point, and Hogan gets distracted by her, and Savage schoolboys him for a really good near fall. Savage grabs him a handful of trunks. They do the Shawn Michaels, who did it first, not sure, but the Shawn Michaels Ric Flair level of pull down your pants and have your ass show to the crowd. And Hogan has his thong tan line. Even his butt is tan, brother. His hot dog tan on his butt too. So
hot dog stayed in the pants though, so it's good.
Exactly. A lot of Hogan butt, too much Hogan butt. I didn't want to see Hogan's ass in this way, but that was a spot in the match, and they did the goofy spot with the toupee. So there was some, humor added to this. I didn't hate it because I
popped for the toupee spot. Yeah, I thought it was Macho Man put it on. I did not
like it. Yeah,
I thought it was good, but it was like the seeing the ass for as long. That should be like a 3-second spot, not a 10-second, 20-second spot. Whatever.
So here's the end here where we get more Nick Patrick stuff going on. And Macho hits his elbow. Clear as day, he has the win. 1, 2, and then Nick Patrick grabs his neck. So puts Savage in a light where he should be champion. And DiBiase comes back out, hands Hogan the tape Nux. Savage blocks the blow and nails Hogan. When Randy heads up for another Macho elbow, DiBiase grabs him, crotches him, and then jumps down to give chase. Giant comes down to stop that, choke slam to the floor. Obviously, Nick Patrick and they're ignoring it all. Giant puts Hogan on top for the 3. Very anticlimactic as far as finishes go. Hogan didn't drop the leg. It wasn't like this back and forth. I like the near falls in the middle of the match. Yeah. By the end, it just felt similar to the Outsiders match where the New World Order just gets thrown on top. And I get they want people to react a certain way. They want people to be upset. But man, that was just like, from the way they were talking on the last Nitro, you think Savage would be tearing Hogan limb from limb, but he just was kind of complacent and feeling each other out, where he wanted to kill Hogan for what he was saying about Liz and his marriage or his ex-marriage. And there was none of that fire. It felt very, I don't know. I just expected more from this match.
Yeah. I mean, even after the fact, like they just drag Macho Man out. Like, you know, he's just in shambles. Nobody gives a shit. They're like, sayonara. Maybe
this plays a part though. Like they probably thought he wasn't coming back. They were like, "Oh, we got Piper now, and he's leaving."
Yeah, I mean they had to have, because this is again in Tony Khan sense, like this is your Adam Cole debut at the end of the pay-per-view.
100%. That's exactly what I thought. Yeah,
and it was just like I was like, damn, and but Macho Man was unfortunately playing the Christian Cage role. Like he just got forgot about. Like, okay, good, thank you, good night. Just, I didn't think it was a terrible match though. I really enjoyed it, but a really shitty finish. And they just sweep Macho Man under the rug and play the bagpipes. Set him out.
So Hogan tells everybody to go see Santa with Muscles, and then we get the bagpipe music, which the crowd doesn't recognize. If that was today, the crowd would have instantly popped. There wasn't the pop, but until he showed his face through the curtain, the announcers keep saying, "I know who that is. I got goosebumps. I know who it is." But it took a while for Piper to emerge through. Piper gets on the mic, cuts a fire promo. He said, since Hogan's bored, he's here to break up the monotony. Back in the 80s, they were running neck and neck as far as star power goes. Hogan then continues to admit it. And then Hogan tries to get in. And I think Hogan knows the time limit is there because he keeps trying to get his way in. And Piper just says, I'm shooting here. I'm not allowing you to get in. And he continues. And they go off the air. So
weird.
It was badly timed. It seemed like Piper wanted to get more in. For a debut like that, you think he would have just kind of said, I'm here, wait until Nitro to have this level of promo, let him go 25 minutes in the ring. But the crowd just watched 2.5, 3 hours of wrestling and to have a 25-minute promo. It's like, all right, Savage, like, just do your, Piper, do your thing and then leave. It just felt, and the fact that at the end, it just got cut off. It was like classic WCW. This is what you hear about.
We gotta go. Yeah. We're out of time.
Shabani's like, we have to go, and you still Piper's like mid sentence.
Yeah, and it was a very, very uncomfortable way to close off, the show with credits and everything. But I think, I now that you say that Hogan was probably more aware of the time, that makes sense. But I think Piper was trying to necessarily come out and do a pipe bomb, and Hogan was trying to cut him off before he said anything. That's the vibe I got, like, because they kept going, oh, I'm not done with you, and Hogan's like, well, listen, brother, I know what you're talking about. We'll do this Monday night, but Piper's like, oh, fuck off, like, let me get my moment. And like even you right before Hogan, like, kind of, he gets out of the ring and they show him like on the outside, and Piper says it, I just wanted my moment. And then they fucking cut. It was, but it was, like I said, very, very impactful debut. Maybe overshadowed somehow. I don't know. I think a lot of people don't respect Piper's time in WCW, but it only gets better from here, man. All the way, they feud all the way until
the biggest Piper fan. Had no idea about he knew he was there, but we were talking about it yesterday on the wrap up. He's like, oh, he made a joke saying he was in WCW, but you would think you followed, like, for me, favorite wrestler right now, probably of all time, is Bryan Danielson. Yeah. I'm gonna watch whatever I can get of Bryan Danielson, and like, you had Piper active in the ring while you were watching wrestling at this time. You think it would be enough to turn you over and let you watch? And I think it ages pretty well as far as adding to the legacy. It didn't detract, in my opinion, from Piper. We'll see as we go on, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot on the plate. We see only a few matches. He's only on Nitro sporadically. It's not like he's going to be embarrassing himself.
I can't wait for you to see Halloween Havoc 97, because that's one of my favorite fucking pay-per-views of all time. And not only because there's some shit showness going on in it, but Piper and Hogan headline, like, that's the main event. It's fucking crazy. Like, the WCW steel cage that they used was batshit bonkers, looked like the Hell in the Cell, tall as fuck. Macho Man's doing elbow drops off of it. A fan claims that they beat the shit out of him. I'm only going over it because I know we're not going to cover it, but it's like, it's one of the fucking most chaotic, beautiful pay-per-views ever. But this version of Piper, man, this is the Piper. This is the DDP. This is where it really starts to get fucking juicy, and you get Piper with that beautiful wavy hair, man. He's looking good. Like, it's awesome. Yeah, look at that. No fear. And I loved him talking shit. Take it easy, Sprout. It's so good, man. Yeah. Piper, I mean, this is the big brain move that Bischoff did during this last 3 months of WCW. It makes sense. It makes so much fucking sense to do it. Crazy.
Yeah, and I think you probably had to feel good about bringing him in. And I'd have to listen to more Bischoff talking about it, but I think it paid off. I think it did age well, and the debut itself aged well.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think Halloween Havoc lived up to its billing. People talk about this, and they wax poetic about the nostalgia about 1996, and this is one of the highlight events. In my opinion, this is important to the legacy of New World Order if you want to understand everything that made them as legendary as they were. We talk about Bash at the Beach. This is one of the Hog Wild as well as a big piece as well. This is like the other Infinity Stone you have to have locked in as Hall and Nash gained the tag team titles, as I mentioned. The match quality compared to Fall Brawl, the pay-per-view before this, is down. Undoubtedly, it's worse. It's not the War Games match. It's not the other matches. Carried heavily by the work rate of Demolenko, Rey Mysterio. Wasn't as good, but it was driven by stories. And Eric Bischoff was in the news today kind of getting criticism about how he doesn't care for in-ring work. He just likes the stories, and the wrestling comes secondary. And that was met with some, adversity, and people said, I don't agree with that, but it's quite evident here. Like, he doesn't, the work rate is like a secondary thing. As long as the story's there to grip people, you have Hogan and Savage in there later on, like years later after this, kind of being a mockery of what Bret Hart would consider pro wrestling. Yeah. It was a mockery of it.
Absolutely, but the counterbalance, he still did have a lot of good work rate there, and I think that's what he forgets. It's all about the storytelling. But listen, man, he was booking these Dean Malenko Rey Mysterio matches too, at least putting them together, having them fucking, have them do their thing. So he knew what the fuck he was doing.
Yeah, and I mean, while the main event didn't live up, the Piper thing carried it. So I think this is memorable for that reason. And then, of course, as we sold at the beginning of the show, Demolenko versus Rey Mysterio is a must-see, a bucket list match as far as wrestling fandom. You can't consider yourself a wrestling fan until you've seen this match. It's appointment viewing. Go out and 100%. Watch it. It's unbelievable what these guys are doing, and this so far is their best effort. Not sure if it tops the next year with Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, because that match is so legendary and so iconic, but I'd have to watch them back to back and see how I feel, because I'm very partial right now to Demolenko versus Rey Mysterio. So,
yeah, I'm
high bar. Though.
It is a very high bar.
So let's move into WCW Monday Nitro from 10/28, 1996 from Phoenix, Arizona, the American West Arena. So our champions are different here. We only got one different champion. Everybody else remains the same, but our tag team champions are now the Outsiders. And everyone, Demolenko is also the Cruiserweight champion, as I was just talking about. He's our new Cruiserweight champion, won it back on 10/27 the night before. In hour number one, we get Tony Schiavone and Larry Zbyszko leading us into Nitro. And right off the bat, Tony Schiavone tells the world the Outsiders won the tag titles and Hogan retained the world title. And after Hogan won the match, they show the Roddy Piper, and they said, we're going to show you the whole promo later in the night. So they used, little breadcrumbs, as Chad likes to say, a little cheese for the rats to get people to tune in for the second hour. Sprinkle a little cheese for the rats, but a very nice open here as far as getting people caught up, because some people didn't order the pay-per-view. This was the 90s.
Yeah, and then sometimes those recaps dragged ass, where they show the stills from everything, and they talk about it for like 15, 20 minutes. It was a different day and age back then. Plus, they're not hammering on reorder the pay-per-view, watch everything, reorder that pay-per-view, and watch it again. So it was a good way to start off the Nitro. It kind of different from their normal bullshit.
Yeah, and you can see they're downtrodden, that the NWO has taken over completely. But there's a glimmer of hope that even though Piper said he's not for WCW, that he's going to be at least a roadblock for New World Order and their takeover. So there's some hope for the announcers, and they're usually our gateway into how WCW is feeling as far as how the war is going between NWO and WCW. They're kind of our gauge into it. And then when Tony Schiavone feels sad, we know we should feel sad. So that's kind of how I gauge it as well.
Yeah.
All right. So our opening match is WCW World Television Champion Lord Steven Regal defeating Juventude Guerrero. And as I mentioned before, this is our first time seeing Regal since he won the TV championship back in August. So for the complaints we have about AEW, and they're justified, about the non-appearances of their champions and where their champions go, they disappear. And when Pac won the All-Atlantic Championship, he's on Dark and Elevation. And list goes on. Wardlow with the TNT Championship. And the tag team championship and blah, 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 and continue the story. But this is straight from 1996, and we're covering this in full, and we're talking about it. It's just a different level of booking. And I'm not saying it's right, but there's history behind it that things like this do happen. It's not the first time. Tony Khan's not making mistakes like a bumbling idiot. He just kind of drawing from a playbook that, you know, bigger stories take bigger precedent, and the MJF stuff, considered that the MJF storyline is considered the NWO storyline. That's his focus. So the other stuff, right, wrong, or indifferent, falls to the wayside. And Steven Regal as TV champion never was on TV. And for the record, I think it's shitty that happens. But if you're following the playbook from WCW, it's almost written in stone it was going to happen.
Yeah, the business.
So the other thing about this match is not just the two of these guys here wrestling in a decent match. We spot Crow Sting, first time sitting up in the rafters, really high up, and this was a sight to behold. And last time we saw him in the black and white face paint confronting the New World Order, he's completely gone into silence at this point. There's no talking anymore. As we mentioned, it's a full year and a half before we get any promo from Sting. Now he just looks sad, sitting up there wearing a trench coat.
It's emo Ronald McDonald.
Well, he has as you have, as face paint wise, he's still kind of trying to discover exactly what he's going to be doing as the character. But this was badass face paint too. He looked intimidating. It was almost completely removed from the person of what we remember Surfer Sting as. Yeah,
no, absolutely. It was complete flip, you know, full 180. Love it.
So this is completely a WCW 1996 match, because as much as the in-ring action is controlling my attention span, there's so much happening outside of the ring that it's an afterthought. So we talk about the lawn dart incident. We talk about the other stuff that happens, and throughout the NWO as their main angles, it takes over what's happening in the show. And I know that blends the reality to the program, because the action is going to happen. There's going to be chaos in the ring, and you can't shut down the match because there's other stuff going on. So in order to create that feeling of chaos, Steven Regal and Juventude Guerrero have to work their asses off in the ring with nobody watching, which would piss me off if I was a fan of both these guys, which I am. And also, if those two guys can't be happy that they're taking a back seat, bumping in the ring for no one to watch.
Yeah, no, it's just a quick shot of that. I mean, every time Sting was in the rafters, everybody would, you know, do this. Even when Punk came back for the first time in AEW, we were all there, and everybody's seen Sting and Darby watching from the distance. So a few minutes it was all Punk, and then everybody started turning their heads looking towards the rafters because they seen it coming, just much like you would hear it. It just takes away from the shit in the ring. And imagine if that was a match, you know.
This sort of was my complaint about the MJF at Grand Slam during the Danielson and Moxley match, where you had MJF up there with the chip, and it was cool to have him overlooking. It's great for TV. But when you show him so much and the fans there are all taking pictures of him, you're not enjoying the main event for your world championship. It's taking away from it. And I get you're building towards that story, but that's, again, straight from the playbook of Eric Bischoff and WCW booking, straight from it. That's exactly how Bischoff would have done it.
Yeah.
So we see NWO picket signs go across where the hard camera points. Six shows up in the crowd and welcomes everybody to NWO Nitro. And now he's the only one without a belt. He wants the Cruiserweight Championship. And I guess he misspoke, because he probably wanted to say the TV championship. We see Hoovy runners out of a butterfly powerbomb, misses the 450, and we get the Regal stretch, pulling his arm out of the socket. Hoovy gives up, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Decent match. Great to see Regal back on TV. But again, secondary thought, Regal's finally back on TV and they're focusing elsewhere. So
yeah, it's Sting!
And it's the NWO, and it's 6, and it's showing everything with the match. All right, so
rich storytelling.
Everybody starts paying attention to Sting, and he's leaving. And Tony Schiavone was supposed to interview Regal, and he just walks to the back instead. We're live, pal. All right, so our next match here, DDP, Mike Enos. Tell us what happened. I think we already know what happened.
It went a minute longer than Juventude Guerrero and Steven Regal, which is fucking mind blowing when you say it. But yeah, bro, come on. Couple moves in, flip him around. Bang! Diamond cutter. Nobody kicks out of the diamond cutter. It's a 1, 2, 3. Good night. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. It was good. And then you get the best part of it. is the outsiders kind of putting their eyes on the Page Man.
That was cool.
Hangman DDP, and it was cool because that I mean, you get that DDP Macho Man moment so far down the line, like really good, rich fucking planting them little seeds, little cheese for the mice, man. Great shit though. I thought it was awesome. Fucking not bad. It was a good little segue. Again, short, sweet match. Nobody kicks out of the diamond cutter, bro.
So speaking of not kicking out of moves, we have Cruiserweight Champion defending his championship against Jim Powers. So the aforementioned Demolenko. My question to you is, Jim Powers is a Cruiserweight? Like, what? They do show AC Green, who's a 90 star for the Phoenix Suns in attendance, which was cool. And I always love that in these old things and old athletes and old musicians or celebrities who no longer are relevant anymore. I like to see it because it builds context of this world we're living in.
Oh, hell yeah. But no, I mean, come on, Jim Powers, Cruiserweight? Bro.
They showed AC Green a few times because he's wearing an NWO shirt, and both announcers are offended. But it's interesting because he's supposed to be this babyface. He's playing for the Phoenix Suns in the arena where they're in, and he's repping for the bad guys. So that was an interesting look for sure. And to your point from earlier, just these bad guys are resonating. They're selling shirts like crazy.
You see it start filling.
Catching fire, yeah.
I love it.
So Malenko gets the rolling clutch pin for the 3. 5 minutes and 4 seconds. The fact that Jim Powers is a cruiserweight, I'm still stuck on, but Demolenko defends his title successfully. We will get Malenko Psychosis for World War III, which will be awesome for the Cruiserweight Championship. Can't wait for that.
Super pumped for that.
So Psychosis does step out of the tunnel to get a closer look at Malenko during the match. So that was a nice little build. And this is what they do, man. This is like the day after Halloween Havoc, they're already building up to their next pay-per-view, and they have an idea where to go. So if we talk about Tony Khan taking ideas from Eric Bischoff, this is what you can draw from. Just immediately off to the races. Go right here and build up the next title match. Make sure all your championships are accounted for with programming, and then go forward with every other story. Once those are set in place, then you can move forward. Like, it's easy as that. Just have a guy stake his claim, and then you build up to it throughout the rest of the month or so. Because right now we have 6 weeks or 3 weeks, 6 weeks or 5 weeks until we get World War III. Yeah,
and it's ridiculous. But they're I mean, like you said, planting seeds. We don't know what the fuck's going on with Full Gear, and it's going to be coming up. What?
It's like next week, right?
Yeah, basically.
All right, so we have our next match here: Jeff Jarrett taking on Ricky Morton. And tell me about this Southern Fried Chicken match, man. This was straight out of Memphis, dude.
Yeah, this was straight out of Memphis. Jerry Lawler probably booked this and sent an email. Oh God, sent a telegram over the WCW bookers.
AOL-induced email.
Yeah, he was IMing like a motherfucker. But yeah, man, this was actually pretty fun. It wasn't anything spectacular. You got Jeff Jarrett, obviously, rocking and rolling. Ricky Morton, who's just there putting people over. He literally, that is all he's been doing. Every time we see him on WCW TV, I think maybe they won one match since we started Shot of Nostalgia.
Yeah,
I don't even think so. Yeah. Like, where's Tom when we need him? But yes, Jeff Jarrett hits him with that shin breaker, and just to tell a little bit of story in that ring, finishes him off with that figure 4 minutes, 34 seconds, and dun dun dun, here comes the Giant, coming out to just tease that belt. I mean, it was weird. I don't know.
Yeah, so again, they're showing that they're doing something with the U.S. title, and the Giant's holding on to it right now. He's not the actual owner, but there's a feud built in there. Jeff Jarrett and the Giant eventually, in my opinion, are going to be wrestling over the U.S. title in lieu of Flair being hurt. And you mentioned Ricky Morton. He was kind of old here. He's still wrestling today on the Indies. This is their farewell tour.
And looks younger now than he did there. It's all the moonshine.
I was a fan of it. You did say before it was quick, but I did like it because it was cool to see Ricky Morton, first of all, working in a singles match, and then Jarrett get kind of his stuff in a way that wasn't overshadowed by other stuff. Of course, the Giant came out after, but this was just a fun old-fashioned match you could have seen 5-6 years before this in Memphis somewhere. That's what was cool about it.
And like you said, this is the exact opposite of Jericho and Six.
Yeah.
Like this is two guys that just got in there and fucking clicked. It was as smooth as peanut butter. but it was just too quick, too short. Much like every time you have peanut butter, it's a quick sandwich.
So our next match here was a no contest. I think they never announced it. You and I were talking about some wrap, but they didn't announce what the finish was. But the Amazing French Canadians versus High Voltage. So the ending saw the Nasty Boys attacking High Voltage while the AFC head to the back. 3 minutes and 43 seconds. The Nasty Boys say they want interview time. They're pissed about Hogan and the New World Order. When WWE wants them around, they're not, and they are nasty. Long story short, Hall and Nash, let's get ready to rumble. They want to wrestle for the tag titles. Get the Nasty Boys off my goddamn screen. But
I don't disagree with you. Yes.
It's horrible.
Oh, you're telling me the thicker Slim Jims are not friendly, my friend.
But the thing is, like, the thing I don't understand is the announcers never said what the finish was. The match just ended. They didn't say that winner by disqualification. Match has been ruled a no contest. I just want some clarification because, like I said, 25 years later, we're trying to take shots of nostalgia. I want to know if it's justified or not.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm taking a goddamn shot.
I'll take two. It's justified, but I mean, somebody's got to have some clarification on the shit. The announcers, get your ring announcer, fucking have Michael Buffer just no contest.
Just something. The following match has been ruled a no contest. Like just something so we know, especially because we're supposed to care and we don't about the Amazing French Canadians and High Voltage. There's supposed to be story being told for them in the tag division. And for the standings of who's getting title shots, shouldn't we know who got the win here?
Yeah.
Well, technically, if High Voltage was attacked, the Nasty Boys attacked High Voltage, which means High Voltage should get the win here by DQ.
Yes, you are correct.
So, but they never ruled it a win. But whatever, it doesn't matter. We're breaking it down like it's the we need to know.
Yeah.
But all right, tell me about Rey Mysterio Jr. taking on Jimmy Graffiti that we talked about so lovingly last week.
I am the biggest Jimmy Graffiti fan. I was just telling you, right? I have all of his. I have ideas of what his merch would look like. It's just a weird fucking dude. But yeah, not a terrible. I'm lying. It was garbage. Jimmy Graffiti, not my cup of tea at all. Rey Mysterio getting the love at least, which is good, and popping along. But yeah, man. Springboard Hurricane Rana for the win. You get the 1, 2, 3, booyaka, 3 minutes 24 seconds, and it was decent, but it wasn't great. It was nothing. You could skip a lot of that.
You do a little skipping if you want.
You skip away, skip to my loo, daddy.
All right, so I won't spend too much time on this. I'll just give you the facts here. Don't really want to give an opinion on it. On the road with Lee Marshall. He's in Grand Rapids, Michigan, pumping people up for the next week's Nitro. He's at Monday Nitro Halloween party, and somebody just showed up in a weasel suit. So that's the clip we get. Don't really care. I'm not even going to talk about it. Just know it existed. If you see it and you have an idea about it and you care about it, maybe next week we'll talk about it if you comment on
leave it in the comments. Yeah,
leave it in the comments if you want me to talk about Lee Marshall. You have to tell me. I'm just trying to guide it.
Is this the first Nitro party technically? Then
it just
do you remember the Nitro parties?
I do. This might be the first one.
Boom. We unlocked history.
We talked about it.
Yeah, it's there.
All right. Next here, we have Chris Benoit taking on Eddie Guerrero, and the history between these guys is enough to get excited for the match. 8 minutes and 23 seconds. Benoit gets the win here. Eddie Guerrero kind of on a little losing streak. We know he broke his rib, so the fact that he's out here wrestling the night after is hugely impressive. Benoit has a taped up shoulder from the night before. This isn't your typical Benoit Guerrero match because of their injury, but they're both selling injuries, and Eddie has a legitimate injury. Benoit selling a kayfabe injury, but they're both giving a masterclass in how to sell. And at this point, this match it becomes worse off because of the injuries. And again, legitimate rib injury. It's hard to breathe, let alone work.
Yeah.
But I just wonder what could have been in a match. Again, it's Nitro. They're trying to tell a story. But Eddie taking the briefcase and the ribs from Steve McMichael. That's the finish here. And it's just interesting seeing these guys link up, especially in that final moment in 2004, WrestleMania 20 in front of Madison Square Garden, where Eddie Guerrero is the WWE champion, fresh off of defending his championship against Kurt Angle. Chris Benoit wins the World Heavyweight Championship against Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and they end with that embrace. Truly a magical moment that got erased because of the terrible things Chris Benoit did later in his life. But it's weird to see these guys here. Who would have thought a small amount of time later, 8 years to be exact, from that moment, they'd be standing in front of MSG as world champions in the rival company? Like, who would have thought that?
No, that's insane. Absolutely insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking about bigger picture. That's why I enjoyed the match a lot. But it was a masterclass in selling too. Both these guys showed how much an injury can add to the match or take away as far as quality, but tell a story of, I really was like, holy shit, I can't believe Eddie's working this match.
Yeah, the richness of a match like this, though, too, is like it builds to that WrestleMania moment. You know, you see how much these guys went through, and that's what makes that WrestleMania moment, give or take. Yes, Benoit was a piece of shit at that weekend, his last weekend of being alive, whatever the case may be. But I mean, you couldn't tell a more beautiful story in pro wrestling between the story of Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. You know, and to have that moment, to see all that partake, to watch these guys grow into these larger-than-life superstars, even though Benoit was like 4'2", it really does. It's a really beautiful thing. That's what makes us all fans of wrestling. You know, it's watching these guys grow into those big moments. It's like saying Sammy and Darby main eventing All Out, you know, in 2026.
Or even be like them main eventing WrestleMania, standing in the ring together.
Yeah, you know,
like,
yeah, absolutely, and totally get that, and like just imagine, like it's a beautiful thing to be like, oh, we watch these guys grow and become these characters, and to see the success that they did, crazy.
If you would have told someone in 1996 that both these guys would be collectively WWE champion, the world champion, and WCW be gone and all that stuff. But if you would have told them just in general, either one of these guys would be the guy at the event in the rival company, they would have laughed at you. So,
except for Paul Heyman.
I
knew it! I fucking knew it!
It's just as far-fetched to have. Again, I think Jungle Boy, maybe Darby Allin, and a Sammy Guevara on that side. But I think even here is less likely. The Benoit and Eddie thing, that story's less likely because the land of the giants existed in WWF. I know Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, they trumped that trend. But now at this point, it seems like smaller guys can be world champions. So it wouldn't be as weird. It still would be it would be bizarre to see.
Very crazy though. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that. I forgot this was a big guys game, you know, but I mean, two small dudes fucking got really big in both ways.
True. I mean, both these dudes, they jacked up. And same thing with Rey Mysterio when he was world champion in 2006. He became a monster. Like he was
shredded.
In a bad way. Like it limited his style. He couldn't move the way he used to.
Yeah, he was like a mini Batista. It was okay.
All right, so before we get to the main event, we have Tony Schiavone interviewing Nick Patrick and his attorney. So the attorney fellow puts Patrick over for doing his job at the best of his ability despite the neck injury. Chris Jericho attacked him last night at the pay-per-view and injured him, and Jericho comes out to lay down the law. He tells Nick Patrick that there's nothing wrong with his neck and he's paid employee of the New World Order. The attorney questions Jericho on the subject of anger problems and not being able to get along with others. Jericho ignores him as Teddy Long, who is apparently Jericho's manager now. They never made that clear, but I guess he's his manager. Comes out to yell at the attorney. He calls him a scam artist and says if he didn't have a degree, he'd be holding a squeegee and washing windows. Patrick's attorney accuses Long of slander, and they continue to argue as we go to commercial break. I love this segment. I thought it was great. I loved it.
This screams a Smart Mark Sterling.
Loved it.
Segment. Yeah, this is maybe Cutler, you know, something like that. Like it's one of those things, and Jericho's perfect in it. I love these little things. And Nick Patrick, fucking Referee of the Year award this year.
So good.
My goodness, this has been the best shit ever.
Did we take a shot of nostalgia? Oh, no, that's for the next match. I had one poured. I'm like, what did I pour another shot? Good segue into the main event. Give us the lead here in your best Michael Buffer voice between Booker T and Lex Luger.
Let's get ready to rumble! It was good without waking the neighbors. Not bad, right?
The test cavity. There you go.
Oh yeah, you gotta rock it. It was okay. there was not a lot of rumbling going on, and it was decent, but Booker T defeats Lex Luger by countout. And it's like 10-minute fucking match with a lot of nothing in between. It's literally just meh. And I don't know. Lex Luger's started off all right at the beginning of the show. Sour taste in my mouth now. I'm like, fuck Lex Luger.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of him either. I think it's not great. I think he's one of those guys that you're just waiting for the better part of his story to come through, and it just never does. Like he just always is.
He's still talking about Chicago. It's uncensored. Like that's what he is for me for the rest of my life now. Oh, well, yeah, I grew up in Chicago. It was a great place.
Booker T, as we talked about in the newsletter, who's working with a back injury, so it explains probably why it wasn't as good as it could be. And also Lex Luger was limited in the ring as well at this point. It wasn't the Lex Luger that was wrestling in way before, 10 years ago, before this, where he was awesome in the ring. Those matches with Sting used to be great. This is not the same Luger. Yeah.
No, not at all.
So we get a count out, 9 minutes and 10 seconds. As much as Booker carries Harlem Heat, somehow, he just still has to come into his own as far as becoming the main eventer. And he eventually does become that guy. And he becomes the heart and soul of WCW in its later years. And he kind of carries that legacy through his WWE run in the early part, where in the Invasion, he is the guy. And I know people explain about, the Invasion sucked because you didn't have the Goldberg and you didn't have Hogan. You needed those guys, but Booker T did a good job of carrying that banner, and he was the guy, and he represented everything about WCW.
Everything. Even NWO.
He did become that as well, and developed himself into a huge star in his own right, where he carved his own niche as the King Booker stuff. He was a world champion, and then now as an announcer. Like, I think Booker T did really well for himself.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
All right, so due to time constraints, they replay only a short amount of Piper Hogan confrontation.
You forgot your shot.
To show the whole thing. Here we go.
Gotcha. Bam. Cheers to the Savage. Yeah.
All right. So Hollywood Hogan, Ted DiBiase, Vincent the Giant respond to Piper's comments without Piper here to interrupt him. Hogan demands to have that Hollywood spotlight put on him for this promo. He tells Savage not to worry about Liz because he's going to take real good care of her. And he winks at the camera. As far as Roddy Piper, he says he thinks he saw some fear in his eyes last night. Funny enough that the shirt said no fear. He goes on to congratulate the Outsiders for winning the tag titles, because now they have the world title, the U.S. title, and the tag titles. And that means they accomplished their hostile takeover. Now it's time to pose. And Hogan says it's time to go out and party in Phoenix. That's how the show goes up the air. I did find it ironic, though, after hyping up for the whole show, they're going to show the remainder of the promo. They didn't show all of it. They just went back to the ring with Hogan.
We're out of time.
And it's interesting that Piper is not in the ring and not here to the day after his debut. He's not there.
No, it's wacky.
He should be there.
Not the nice thing to do. Like, he just makes the whole segment fall flat on its face.
Yeah, especially that he didn't have the ability to answer. And it would have been nice to see Hogan get the better of the promo with Piper there to at least listen to him and build up this match that eventually we get in December, right? That's the time that we actually get Piper's debut and that big match that they're building towards at this point.
Yeah, crazy.
What are your thoughts, though, that Piper never won the world title? I mean, obviously never was WWE, WWF champion. He was always the IC champion. I know he won eventually the US title in WCW. He was a tag champion in WWE in his later years with Ric Flair, like when he was well past his prime. Why do you think Piper wasn't world champion? Is it just a case of he just didn't need it?
I don't know. I think a lot of it was booking. Like, he was the bad guy always, and even when he was on the teetering point of being the good guy, like, there was other people in line. It was one of those things, like, the stars just never aligned for it, was he worthy of it? Hell yeah. I mean, did he need it? Probably not. I don't think he did. I think I remember more about Piper than I do a lot of guys who have won the belt. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those to each their own things. I think Piper was great without the title. I think he's fantastic. He's one guy that did not need it.
I just think in his early run in WWF, where he main evented WrestleMania 1 and was a huge reason it was a success. because he was an equal bad guy as Hogan was a good guy.
Yeah.
He was a perpetual mid-carder throughout the rest of WWF as far as booking goes. We all know he's a huge star, the Piper's Pit segments and all of that. But the IC title was sort of his glass ceiling, and it's interesting to me that he never became that world champion. The same could be said for WCW. They never actually pulled the trigger on him. And same thing, I just don't understand how you don't, there's a lot of money in that program where Piper is the champion, and it might have been his call. He might have said, I don't want to be champion, but I know I read his book. He did say it's the man who makes the title, not the title who makes the man.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of money left on the table when Piper is not the guy with the big title going against your babyface champion and trying to people chasing him. I think that's some story we didn't get.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. There's definitely a missed opportunity, but still, yeah, man, just good in general. It was. I mean, I love Piper. I got no bad words to say against the guy. Every time he's been on TV, he's cracked me up, made me piss my pants laughing, or being scared or whatever the fuck it is. But like, he was just a great talent, man. Like, he outshines any title by any means, and he's a good fucking solid ass worker. That's it. I got nothing more.
So before we move into Chaser, I have this funny Roddy Piper story that I want to tell here on the air. And in 2003, when he returned to WrestleMania 19 during the Hogan Vince match, he kind of came back into the aura of wrestling. He was always around. He was posting on his blog. He was ever present doing the shoot interviews. And back in the day, you mentioned AOL and AIM. There used to be screen names, and I did some research about finding information about how to contact wrestlers and send them emails. But there was an AIM address. So on AOL Instant Messenger, there was, I remember to this day, Louis Roch RRP. And Louis Roch was someone who was Roddy Piper's handler. So he would handle fan mail, and every once in a while, Piper would hop on for a certain amount of time and answer fans' questions. And Piper was the nicest guy who would take time to answer questions from kids like me. I was at the time 12, 13 years old in 2003, where he would answer questions about his time in WCW, his time in WWF, and he was amazing. So just a little fun story of him taking the time when he didn't have to. Like, you don't have to do things like that. So he was, to the end, one of those guys that gave back to the business, gave back to the fans that made him who he is. And he gets a bad rap for being this cantankerous person who's bitter on the business. With some of those shoot interviews, he gets a little bit of that heat, but I don't know, man. I always remember that in a positive light. And every time I see him, I remember him taking the time to answer fan questions from someone he didn't have to. I was a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, let's move to the Chaser and talk about our favorite part of the 2 nights of wrestling we had here. All right, so every week we'll pick our favorite part of the 2 nights of wrestling. So Belcaster, lead us off here. What's your favorite part of Halloween Havoc and Nitro combined?
Man, I know you're going to choose Demolenko and Rey Mysterio, so I'm just going to switch it up, and I'm just going to say, it was watching Roddy Piper come out. I honestly think that was such a fucking big brain move on WCW's part, and sure, they're piggybacking off of WWF's stories, but you can't have story without history, and I think that this is a good way to hold off the year until Sting comes back. It really is. And yeah, I think it was done very right, minus the botched, interview segment or whatever you want to say, the in-ring talking time between Hogan and Piper. But I thought, what a moment. Especially at our age, how big it is, two of the biggest icons in wrestling. This was huge. It was good shit. And Piper's Piper, man. Take it easy, Sprout. Doing his Piper shit. I loved every minute of it. And I don't know. I'm a huge Piper fan. I'm happy to see him in this. This is the Piper I remember the most. I'm jumping for joy on the inside as a little kid. Mike, yeah. Fuck you. Let's go, Roddy Piper. Yeah, it was great.
And part of watching this at that end segment, where you have all these personalities in the ring, Hogan, Piper, Savage had just got done losing the match, not to mention the Giant, Ric Flair's on the card, Chris Jericho. This is a different time, man. The personalities are larger than life. And I don't know if we'll ever get there again. And it might just be blurring the line of reality because they're so accessible now. Social media has really bridged the gap where you know what's going on. I mean, even Hulk Hogan's on Instagram where he's showing pictures of him and his family.
Who wants to see my hog? Yeah.
he has an accessibility to him where back in the day, these guys felt like they weren't human, that they were superheroes that just put on a pair of tights and that's all they existed as.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point where these guys will be larger than life to the same point. Maybe The Rock is there, but again, he's so accessible as far as like everybody knows his day to day. We know what he eats for his meals, and
yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get back to where we were at this point, where guys like Savage and Hogan were making people suspend belief and think about these guys. It's not thinking about them as people, thinking about them as the performers in the ring.
Yeah, larger than life superstars, man.
So my favorite, obviously, Demolenko versus Rey Mysterio, but I'll piggyback on the Piper thing. I thought this presentation was great. One of the more well-done WCW debuts that we've seen. They've done a lot of things right throughout 96, the Sting stuff and the Hogan turn and the Savage and Liz stuff, Ric Flair segment. There's been a lot of highlights. This is up there as far as highlights and presenting somebody in a positive light because you immediately took a guy who was a known. It was a known entity from WWF in the wrestling world. But if someone didn't know Roddy Piper as the character, immediately he's on the same playing ground as Hulk Hogan. And I think that gets dismissed in a lot of ways in people's eyes, where a lot of the talent back in the day are jockeying for position. They don't want to give too much to the other people because they want to hold their spot. What they don't understand is you're only going to be able to maintain that top spot if someone else is coming up that is your equal to make you draw money and make someone want to see them beat you or have a chance to beat you. It's been a while now. Hogan feels like nobody can beat him. So I think absolutely. Piper feels like he can beat Hogan, and we get to see the build for it. I think it's a great story that WCW is continuing to tell throughout the end of 96.
110%. I feel like he could beat Hulk Hogan, and it's just one of those things. Like they know how to hit it the right way. It's just there's hiccups and everything. We're live, pal, so it's good. I was happy to see Piper again. I love him with the hair is just feathering like Farrah Fawcett. He's got the little scruff. It's a good looking Piper too. It's fucking awesome.
All right, so with that being said, let's close the tab. The bar lights are coming on. The spooky dust is settling. Get the Halloween stuff. We're going to get our weekend start, but let's close the tab. Let's give our final wrap up for next week's show, talk about what's coming up in the tavern, and send you guys on your merry way. All right, here closing the tab, the final wrap up of the show. Next week's episode is, believe it or not, episode 26 of 30. Will be on Friday, 10/14/22. Let's catch at 7 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. November 4th and November 11th, Monday Nitro. So 2 big episodes of Nitro. We'll talk about everything that went down there. Go through the newsletter. Our good friend Dave Meltzer will guide the way. But before I move into my stuff, what's coming up down the pike? What's going on in the world of Mike Belcaster? Fig Night and everything going on in your world.
Yeah, we got Fig Night Tuesdays. 7 p.m. Eastern. That's right up your guys' alley. It's 6 p.m. my time. It's right freshly after dinner. You get to sit down, take the belt off, just enjoy some good action figure wrestling talk. It's the best. Yeah, man, AEW wrap up. You know where we are after flying live right after All Elite Wrestling. I was just about to say, you should pop that spooky music back on. You just read my mind. I loved it. Right on time, man, to read that mind. But yes, the All Elite wrap-up. And, of course, right here at Shot of Nostalgia, this is like my safe home. This is my nice little spot to be here. I put my pillow down after I take off this spooky Sting makeup. Yes! The early Danhausen prototype, but good stuff, yeah. So that's where I'm be. You know where to find me, theturnbuckletavern.com. I'm around.
All right, so on my end here, first, let's go through Vince's The Tavern, which will be airing on Sunday night. We have the Slime Balls, Sage Chance, and Tommy Rant are visiting the tavern, airing 8 p.m. October 9th. That's on Sunday, so check it out. 2 up-and-comers from NYWC. No doubt about it, they'll be future tag team champions. And other visits to Tavern, I have announcements here. We got the Big Boofa. Desmond Cole will be next week, October 16th. He'll be at VPW. We'll talk about that show in a second. And then fresh off, you guys probably saw them on my Instagram, we got the cause of it all, Joey Conway visiting the Tavern November 18th. Coming down, the current NYWC Fusion champion. He's building towards that match with Man Bun Jesus, a casket match in an NYWC. Can't wait to see that live and in person. So a lot of different guys visiting the tavern. I can't wait to bring all the independent wrestling to your doorstep because they deserve to be recognized. But speaking of independent wrestling, we have the VPW show coming up, 2022 Gold Rush Rumble, 20 competitors, 1 winner, Saturday night, October 15th. Tickets start at just $25. Buy your tickets now. I'll be there. Turnbuckle Tavern will be represented, giving out stickers, selling shirts. Come say hi. Enjoy some VPW wrestling. Can't wait to be there. Bell time at 7:30. Do not miss it. Get there early. Meet the stars. Get some stuff. Buy some merch. And visit me. Other than that, we got some good stuff as well. We got, of course, Halloween Havoc. I will run through the remarkable wrestling card. We got the second round of the Tag Team Championship Tournament match. Miracle Generation taking on PPA. Of course, we have Above the Rest taking on the Brick City Boys. And Fight or Die taking on the Rep. So we're going to be crowning our future remarkable Tag Team Champions down the line. This will be in Deer Park, so we got some good matches. Not to mention Adonis Stone versus JoJo Collins. We also have a career versus hair match. Kono Capuccia versus Percy Ryan. And of course, the aforementioned Desmond Cole, the Big Boofa, Beyond visits the tavern. The day after, he'll be taking on Gabriel Sky in the heavyweight championship match at Halloween Havoc. Will he be the world champion during our visit the tavern? Will we be talking about a win over Gabriel Sky? Who knows? Make sure you guys support independent wrestling. Check it out. I'll be there live in person wearing a sport jacket. You guys will know why I'm there when I'm there. I'll have a mic in my hand. So I'll tell you. Each day, we'll be dropping a little bit of hints.
It won't be me.
We're kicking off some spooky season. Lead us out, Mike, with the turnbuckletavern.com.
You know the drill, theturnbuckletavern.com. We got Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Discord, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pro Wrestling Tees, Spring Tees. Just go there. Click on everything. Do something at those sites. You know what the drill is. I think you're familiar with the internet by now. It's not 1996 anymore. So yeah, get off your instant messenger, your CompuSave computers, CompUSA, whatever the hell it is. Quit listening to Chris Jericho on the Twitter machine, and come on down to theturnbuckletavern.com and just love us. That's all we ask, because we love you, Daddy.
We love you right back, Mike Belcaster, and this has been one of the best episodes we've done of Shot of Nostalgia. As we approach the end of 1996, I'm starting to become a little bit sentimental towards this, but don't worry. The journey will continue. Season 2, we'll show the schedule really quick before we get out of here. Season 2 of Shot of Nostalgia has already been announced, November 2022, ECW 1995. Join the ride. It's a shorter season, 13 episodes, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a different format. Not as much meat on the bone, but certainly going to be an interesting time as far as developing different characters. We're going to see a lot of familiar faces.
Absolutely. About as loose as those ring ropes are in 1995 in ECW. And but it's going to be a good time as 1995 ECW was. So make sure you guys stay tuned, as always.
With that being said, guys, we got Eric Bischoff in my ear. He's giving me all the cues to come off, and I'm telling him he's a fucking mark. I gotta get out of here. We're out of time. We gotta go.